Remote work. Many of you have heard about remote work in due course of the pandemic. However, we have to wonder, is remote work the solution or is it part of the problem? Is it only due to the pandemic? Are we all going to return, or are we going to stay constantly in a situation where work from home or even work from anywhere is a good idea? And I have someone who's an expert in this. Hello and welcome, engineering manager at Reddit, Frédérique Mittelstaedt.
Hi, Niels. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for taking the time, and I'm getting straight into the topic. You working for Reddit? They are located in the US. You are in London. Since when does Reddit have a remote work approach in place? Is it due to the pandemic, or did it happen before already?
Reddit had a flexible work from home and remote work strategy even before the pandemic. So when I first joined Reddit as a freelancer in 2019, they had employees based on the West Coast and the East Coast of the US, in other areas of the US remotely, as well as in Dublin. And they also had contractors like myself in the UK and in other areas of the world. So even though there were still many office-based employees, the team was already distributed, and that was very well supported.
Nice.
And then of course, as the pandemic hit, everybody had to start working remotely. But because we already were trained in having all meetings on video calls and supporting these remote employees, it wasn't a huge shift for our team. And Reddit also used the opportunity to announce officially that from now and indefinitely, employees could choose whether they want to work in an office, whether they want to work remotely from anywhere, or if they want to have perhaps a hybrid approach of sometimes working in the office and sometimes not. And for the US specifically, they also announced that they will just have a single pay grade across the entire country, which I think in the US especially is unheard of.
Absolutely. So there will be no force where they tell you you have to be in the office that many days. If someone by themselves decides I'm work from home constantly, that's perfectly fine.
Yes, that's perfectly fine. And there are quite a lot of employees that I know, some of my colleagues even, who have moved from the Bay Area to other parts of the US because they either want to live somewhere closer to nature, or because they want to be with their families if they are not from the Bay Area. So, yes.
Or they want to get rid of the crazy and out of control rent from the Bay Area, maybe as well.
I mean, that's probably also a consideration, that's for sure.
Yeah. So many people struggle when they work at home to stay productive. And you do that very well for many years already. What are your personal top tips for a successful remote work environment at home?
Well, I think if you're working from your home, then try to create as much of a comfortable environment for yourself where you want to spend extended periods of time, but where you can also focus. If you have a spare room where you can create a small home office, or even if it's just a small side cupboard or perhaps a larger side closet, if you can design that space for yourself to be comfortable, yet a focused environment, that's very beneficial. But even if you don't have that, you can create a similar corner in a room and thereby create a space for yourself. Of course, very important for most remote work is having a good and reliable internet connection, and also having good audio equipment, and to an extent also video equipment. But even though we have a lot of video calls, what matters more than the video quality is actually your audio quality, because people will mostly be listening to you. So that's the first thing. And I think everything else largely depends on your specific role. So depending on whether you have specific working hours you must work, or if you're working with team members in different time zones, you'll face different challenges. But independent of those aspects, if you and your team can experiment with different approaches, then you can identify what works well for you. In general, every team is different. And so maybe your team prefers to work more closely with each other, and so you will have more synchronous meetings. Or maybe you have team members that are distributed across Europe or even multiple continents. And so then it might be preferable not to have as many synchronous meetings, just because otherwise the meeting times might become very uncomfortable for some people. And the main challenge with all remote setups is around communication. A lot of communication in an office-based environment happens informally, the typical water cooler conversation. And so if you're fully remote, that just doesn't happen. And so you have to consciously create those environments. I have, for example, have a lot of one-on-ones and also cross-team and cross-org meetings to make that happen. We have automated systems for organizing socials where you can choose to, for example, randomly meet someone from a different role in the same region. So maybe I would be connected to someone else in the UK or to someone in Ireland, and then I could get to know them that way. And within your team, you still need to also just emphasize over communication and written communication. Many things just get lost when having video calls, and so having a written log of everything that has happened and written documentation for your projects and approaches and whatever you're discussing is essential. One top tip there that I found was to have the entire team work together in a shared document, like in a Google Doc. Normally, if you have a meeting, you will have some contributors who are very vocal and who are comfortable with contributing a lot. And there are others who are less comfortable, either because they might be more introverted or because they prefer to first think and then speak, and not first speak and then think. And so you can actually have much more efficient meetings by using a Google Doc-based format. And so what we do is we have a prepared template for the type of meeting that we have. Let's say a biweekly review. There are a few sections, and everybody can simultaneously enter their notes in bullet point format into that section. The notes are prefixed with their name, and then people can comment and ask questions on each other's notes. And after a, let's say, 5-minute period of silent writing, we can then all together go through the notes and discuss. And that way, everybody has had time to think about it. We have the notes already, and we can then still have a discussion. And that is a really efficient format that works really well for us.
Excellent tips. Excellent tips. Asking about your personal motivation. Many people who live in London are, let's say, due to different motivations, they're very keen on having this fancy office, city of London, being in the center, then going to the pub with colleagues afterwards, etc., etc. What is your personal motivation that you prefer to work from home, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure. I mean, the first advantage I think that everybody who works remotely has, no matter where they're located, is simply that you save on the time and cost of the commute. Even living in London, where you have decent public transport, it will still take, let's say, 45 or 60 minutes per side to commute to your office. And so if you don't do that, if you work from home primarily, then you save that time, and you can use that time for either your own personal activities, for hobbies. And I think that's just the benefit that few other ways of working can offer. Apart from that, I mean, there's also some flexibility around working hours. My team, for example, is largely based in the US and Ireland. So I mostly work or have my meetings in the evenings. So if I was to work from an office, then I would be, let's say, working from the office during the day, but then I would have to stay late in the evenings. So because of that geographical distribution, it doesn't really make sense for me either. I just would never really be at home.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're now talking about, to round this interview up, when we're now talking about the different roles you might consider, you're working in an IT environment, and often people have either the prejudice or the idea that they say work from home, great for IT jobs, not so much for other jobs. What would you say about that statement? Do you think that work from home is a rather very IT specific setting, or would you say that pretty much any role can be delivered by remote work or work from anywhere situations?
I don't think it's the right choice for every position. For example, any manufacturing business where you need to have large industrial equipment, you cannot control that from home. You need to have the people in the plant.
True. That is, undeniably, I agree.
Yes, but and I think there are other categories like many jobs in the service industry that also cannot be done from home. But there are large numbers of jobs where there's really no specific need to be in the office. You can quite comfortably run a sales organization in marketing, IT, of course, HR. Those are all roles that are largely based around being able to have internet access and having meetings. And so for any role really where you just need internet and have meetings, for that, it's fine. I would say there's a caveat to, for example, take sales organizations. I know that many sales professionals also thrive from the energy that is present in a sales organization and when they are physically co-located. And so if you and your team realize that that is something that you need and want, then of course, I can totally see the benefit, but I don't think that applies for that many roles.
Yeah, fully agree. So I think that we saw an excellent approach here by Reddit Inc., an international company, and the engineering manager, Frédérique Mittelstaedt. So at the end of this interview, there's only one thing for me left to say. Freddy, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Niels.